I'm going to Italy tomorrow for the Ferrari 296 GTS launch.
What?
It's on the calendar, bro.
You are?
You got invited and you said I'm out of town, but Zach couldn't go. Yeah.
Am I out of town?
You were. Something's going on.
I think, was I supposed to be out of town? Oh,
Yeah.
That rules. Good for you.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
It's too bad I said
I'll be drinking.
It's too bad yeah. I'm glad you're going.
Yeah, me too.
That's cool. I forgot.
This is the Ferrari 296 GTS, the Italian company's latest way to dry hair and burn money. It sits between the F8 Tributo and SF90, both in terms of price and power. It's down 2 cylinders compared to the F8, but makes up for it with a very powerful electric motor, and thus marks the electrification of Ferrari's more affordable sports cars. Although with a starting price over $300,000, that term is relative. Ferrari's road cars have always had 8 or 12 cylinders, and those soundtracks won the hearts of millions. So can the V6-powered 296 do the same? And what does this electrification mean for the car and the brand? To find out, I went to an Italian bike rack. Now, with any car of this performance caliber and powertrain complexity, air is going to be a very important factor. And there was a lot of changes to this car versus the F8, which preceded it, and it starts at the front. This they call the T-tray, and it's a different type of aerodynamic system than the other car had beforehand. With the Pista and the F8, you had the vent coming out over the hood, and that means you had no chance of having a frunk and taking weekend luggage with you. This changes that. The air is managed down here with the T-tray. It creates more downforce underneath as well as directing some of the cooling, and that allows you to have enough space in the front for 2 carry-on bags. Another new piece of kit on the 296 are the brakes. These are the brakes that were taken from the SF90 that have a special duct on the inside of the caliper to help cool them. But you have to get air there, of course, and that is done by these vents right here below the headlights. That sends air down to the inside of the caliper and then shoves cold air into those brakes, cooling them down. Now, what's really cool about this system is those special calipers remove the need for having a special ducting pipe aiming air at the inside of the caliper. That means they could have a wider underbody, which increase downforce and reduce drag, and allow them to have slightly wider tires. Now, of course, the biggest feature with the GTS is the removable roof, or the retractable hardtop rather. But that can create some challenges with air. When you put the top down, the air likes to go every which way. And there's another complication, which is that this car does not have glass directly behind this buttress. A lot of the competition from Lamborghini and indeed the F8 and the 488 Spider, they had glass going all the way basically from just behind the seats to that wing directing the air. They got rid of that because this was inspired by the 250 LM design, which of course presents some aerodynamic challenges. To solve this problem, they have this, which they call the bridge. This allows the air to kind of jump from the back of the windscreen over to this bridge and then continue down to the active aero in the back. They had to make a couple of other small tweaks to manage that air going into the cabin because they don't want your fancy new hair blowing around. We have these buttresses here behind the seats and then this little window. Now you'll notice that when you put the top down, the window doesn't actually go down all the way. It stays up about 1 inch, and that's the perfect amount to manage the air to keep you coiffed and fresh looking. Now, of course, the engine needs to breathe and stay cool, so you have the kind of traditional Ferrari intakes here. One side of it directs air toward the intercoolers, the other side directs air into the engine, which it then lights on fire. Now, of course, all that heat and air has to go somewhere. It all has to come out somehow, and that's what's happening here at the back. You have the heat extraction here, which is actually fed through these intakes above the wing, and this cools the hybrid system, the battery, the electric motor, etc. Also really trick, you have this carbon fiber active aero element, which goes up and down depending on the speed you are going. And what I really like is that there's no show-off mode. There's no button you can hit inside when you're stopped in traffic that lifts your wing up in the air to tell everyone that you have a really, really fast car, as if they couldn't already tell. Now this was carbon fiber because this has the Assetto Fiorano package. If you have the regular car, it'll be a composite material, it'll be glossy black. And last but not least, you have a center-mounted exhaust. The exhaust manifold itself is actually made of Inconel, so it's super, super light. I think the whole back end of this car looks really smooth and really trick. Now GTS means the top can go down, so if you are driving on a beautiful day like I am today, and you have about 14 seconds to spare, you can put the hardtop down. You can also do it while you're moving, of course, up to about 25 miles per hour, but I'd prefer to have fewer distractions when I'm driving in a country with a language I don't understand and street signs that are brand new to me. Bene. The other wonderful trick that the 296 has, of course, is that EV engine and the EV-only drive mode, which they call eDrive. It has a range of about 25 kilometers and a top speed of around 80 miles an hour, which I tested on the highway. I can verify that you can cruise in this thing near silently on the freeway at 80 with traffic. Of course, that will hurt your range a bit, and mine dropped from 21 kilometers to 13 in about 3 minutes. But for driving around town past people that are having lunch outside, I really enjoy being able to drive silently. You know, I passed a number of people earlier that were having lunch at a cafe, and they turned to look at the car, and I wasn't bothering them with the noise and the exhaust fumes that normally come out of a supercar. I just cruised by near silently like a mag train. It's really pleasant. It really is. I know that a lot of the reason for this is that so people can drive through London without getting taxed, but honestly, it makes the car more livable. It makes it more enjoyable to use in more situations because I'm not bothering anybody. I'm not echoing the sound off the walls and announcing to the world, I have a supercar, look at me. Now I can turn off eDrive manually, switching to either hybrid mode, performance, or qualifying, or if I get into the gas pedal a little too far, it will automatically turn on the engine for me.
The big story with this car is the engine, a 2.9-liter 120-degree V6 twin-turbo, and the first V6 ever put in a Ferrari road car, as long as you don't count the Dino, which Ferrari doesn't. Despite being down 2 pistons from the F8, thanks to some hardware improvements, this engine actually makes more horsepower. The revised turbochargers are slightly smaller, but 24% more boost efficient, thanks to stronger, lighter parts and a max speed of 180,000 RPM. The result is 663 horsepower, and that's before you turn on the 6.5 kilowatt-hour battery pack sitting behind your seat. When you do, the electric motor sitting between the engine and transmission feeds an additional 122 kilowatts, or 165 horsepower,
is speed! Is the McLaren Artura, which is a little bit lighter, but this makes 150 horsepower more. The gas engine in this car makes almost as much. Now, of course, one of the jobs the electric motor is doing is torque fill, so it is making up for any lag that may exist. It's propelling the car forward while the boost comes on, which doesn't take. The sound of a Ferrari has been a big selling point since the beginning, in my opinion. The cars sounded amazing. Oh, this is everything. Saying that it had similar resonance and harmonics to the V12 engines. You hear that? Oh my God. To the SF90, most of the controls in here are capacitive. A number of the controls on the steering wheel are capacitive touch, and you have to either activate them to bring up a certain menu or tap something to bring up the buttons themselves, or they go dark and they kind of disappear. That feature's good because it means you can't accidentally of those yellow-backed center tacks that you had in some of the earlier cars. And it's also really adjustable and interchangeable. I can bring my nav around, I can tap this button for max view. Virtual cockpit is, but it's close. It is definitely close, and it's very good. Totally visible in the day. That's not just a gimmick where you can make your passenger look at the speedometer, so they can take that task away from the driver and let the driver drive. I like that.
Thankfully, the navigation soon brought me to a road that was a little more exciting.
Range, 8,500 RPM redline. I mean, that's a lot. Especially on a road this tight. I mean, if I rev out second gear, I'll be going to jail. And I don't speak the language here, so I don't know. How do you say, can I make you laugh so you don't shank me? Or stick it to me? How do you say that in Italian? You know, the steering is light, but I actually can feel a good amount through the wheel. You know what? That might be too loud for audio. What a lovely feature. What a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant idea. I mean, the thrust out of the hole is just ridiculous. Steering is light, the rack, I like the speed. Quick, not too quick. Look, I don't have to quite go hand over hand on these switchbacks. It's a really nice road. Tarmac is really smooth, but I can still feel really tiny vibrations through the wheel, like fore and aft. Wheels, yeah, it's talkative. I'll have to go a little crossed over there.
Thankfully, this wheel is mostly round. Hello, Corvette, are you listening? It's mostly round, flat bottom wheel. Man, this thing just slaloms so nicely. You do have to watch out getting on the gas too early because it lifts the front up. It does. I mean, this thing, woo! It'd be so easy to slide this car. I'm definitely not gonna do it here. But of course it does. Of course it's easy, Zach. It has 828 horsepower and 545 pound-feet of torque going to the rear wheels. Yeah, you can slide it. Durr. The force will overcome the friction possible. That is how that happens. I have the most amazing, at least now I'm stuck behind a Defender 90. This person is so uncomfortable, both ergonomically and they're uncomfortable because they're on a twisty road in a car that is not meant to do such things. This is race pace for the Defender 90. You have no idea how scared that person is. Tractor, why wouldn't there be? Blow-off sounds, chicane. It's agile, I'll give it that. And it allows me to correct my mistakes quickly. The brake pedal, I really like. This brake-by-wire thing is still weird to me that I'm not actually feeling the friction of the caliper. There is a disconnect. And this way, the pedal feel is always consistent, so you can get used to that. You just really gotta hope the computer knows what it's doing. And I don't know, I'd have to test it on a racetrack to see if it allows me to really modulate and feel clamping force. Now, with a roundabout, I would love to drift it, but I'm not going to because I don't want to buy this car for the rest of my life. But this thing has the new generation of electronic side slip control. Basically, you can just dial on the screen how much drift you want to have, and then you go through a corner, enter it too hot, add too much throttle, and it'll sort it out for you. It's just, what a wild time to be alive. There are so many systems at work in this car, so many upgrades to sensors and computing power, basically keeping you from killing yourself and helping you turn the fastest lap time, depending on where you put the Manatino switch. Right now I have it just at normal. There's all these invisible forces just helping you succeed. It's like Mel Gibson, no matter what he did or how bad he was, he's got a whole team of agents and managers and lawyers just going, no, you're gonna keep working, don't worry about it. You mash that gas, Mel. Go, you just hit that throttle as hard as you want.
It wasn't all perfect. Capacitive buttons are annoying on smooth roads, but on a bumpy one with a Fiorano package, adjusting the temperature was like putting on a contact lens while running. Even with that new update, I accidentally awoke the voice command system while trying to hit the turn signal.
Can you help me signal left, please?
And after 3 hours in the carbon fiber seats, I felt like I'd been thrown from a horse. And then there were those Multimatic shocks.
I was hoping the suspension would get better the faster I went, but honestly it's just too stiff. This is a pretty smooth road, but the little imperfections come through and they're moving the body around quite a lot. If you're driving this on anything but the smoothest racetracks, you definitely want the MagRide. Steering is, I don't know, right there with Porsche, tied for second possibly. It's really, I'd have to drive them back to back. I really would. And honestly, on a more dynamic road with higher speed corners, can't really feel how much friction's coming through the tires. What an engine. Compared to the F8, the turbos got smaller, but they got way more efficient. They spin faster. They build boost quicker. And that means they make more power. That means the whole thing makes more power. It is ridiculous. This thing makes almost as much power as the F8, and this has 2 fewer cylinders. Plus, the engine weighs 30 kilograms less. Now, of course, they add the whole hybrid system, which weighs like 260 pounds. But, hey man, you gotta take your wins where you can get them. I can feel just adding a little throttle without the electronics managing it. You would break loose very quickly. On a track, if you were Chris Harris and had some space, you could melt these tires in 2 seconds. Right there, over that bump. That was an angled bump under throttle. Computers sorted it out so quickly, so quickly. 15 years ago, if you went over that bump with that kind of throttle, you would just be sailing off the hill, absolutely sailing off the hill. But all these computers are so quick. The yaw control, everything about this is so smart and so fast. It just sorts it out. It's really amazing. It's really amazing. Like, okay, do I miss the V8 sound? Yes, I do. I do. I miss it. I like the way the V8 sounded from Ferrari. I like the way the V12 sounded. They're raw and loud and raucous. They sound angry. The V12s especially. I mean, it sounds like demons flying through a canyon at supersonic speed, coming to rip your heart out. It sounds great. This doesn't have that. Even though it does give you some consolation prizes with the blow-off valves and stuff. It does sound cool, and people will hear it. But look, it's the times, okay? Everyone's shrinking their engines. Everyone's adding hybrid power. It's not just Ferrari. McLaren's doing it with the Artura. Lamborghini announced that all their cars after 2024 are going to have a hybrid system of some kind in it. So blaming Ferrari for this, getting mad at them, it's like getting mad that the train you're on keeps driving past the scenery you want to look at. That's what trains do. Everything is getting electrified right now. And so all we can ask as car fans and fans of driving is that those electric systems are integrated seamlessly and that they elevate our driving experience instead of reducing it or diminishing it. And in this instance, I would say they succeeded. They definitely succeeded. So kudos Ferrari. It's not as loud, but it's real fast. And when you want to chill out, it does that too. So thank you all for watching. Thank you for listening to the podcast. We'll see you next time.
And remember, always fight your tickets. Use code TST10 on the Off the Record app available in the Android and iOS store, or go to offtherecord.com/TST.